In my last video, I dove into Need for Speed Underground for the first time. I loved discovering the game as a new player, but more importantly, I loved seeing so many of you in the comments talk about your experiences with the game. If you haven't watched it yet, go check it out. Your tips and comments really make these videos feel more important and special to me. That video was part of my promise to play every Need for Speed release, and with Underground now complete, we're shifting gears into its direct sequel, Need for Speed Underground 2. This is where the series exploded in popularity, with Underground 2 being the second best-selling game in the franchise behind Most Wanted. As a newcomer, I'm pumped to see what makes Underground 2 not only a cornerstone of racing game history, but more importantly, I want to know if it holds up today. Alright, enough talking, let's dive in. My name is Mercy, and I played Need for Speed Underground 2 for the first time. Enjoy. Need for Speed Underground 2 was released on November 15th, 2004 for PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, and PC. A Nintendo DS version later launched on May 10th, 2005. Both the Game Boy Advance and DS versions have more in common with the first Underground game than the second, and while I would love to talk about the differences today, I'm going to be saving both of them for a future Need for Speed handheld games video. Get subscribed so you don't miss that. Today I'll be focused on the PC version, which as far as I know is identical to the mainline console releases. I wanted to experience the game as vanilla as possible on my initial playthrough, so I installed a widescreen patch and a fix for my Xbox controller. Let's kick this off with the story. The game kicks off with a flashback montage of you from 6 months ago, on various magazine covers, and of you defeating the best racers in Olympic City, the setting from the first game. You've defeated everyone there is to beat there, but suddenly you receive a call from an unknown man inviting you to his posse, and he refuses to take no for an answer. Your character doesn't speak, but it's very quickly obvious that he declines the offer because right after this, the same man from earlier crashes into your car and totals it, claiming he had a little problem to take care of. Fast forward to present day and you're on a plane headed to Bayview City with a note from Samantha. The note says that after the accident, she's not surprised you wanted to mix things up and leave Olympic City. She says she has a friend in Bayview named Rachel, and Rachel has a car waiting for you at the airport. And so after landing, you take off in Rachel's 350Z, headed towards the car lot to pick out your first car. From this point on, the cutscenes in Underground 2 are pretty few and far between, but the gist is that you're trying to rebuild your reputation in Bayview so that the guy who crashed into you earlier reveals himself. He eventually does come forward. It turns out his name is Caleb Reese, and Caleb runs the Wraiths crew, the biggest street racing crew in Bayview. And so your primary goal throughout Underground 2 is to dethrone Caleb and become the best racer in Bayview. The story is, for the most part, the same story as it was in the first game. It doesn't take any huge risks or reveal any big twists. It's tame and pretty straightforward. That's not necessarily a bad thing though. The story takes a backseat for most of the game's runtime, and that allows the focus of the game to lay on other things like the gameplay, the cars, and the world. As I've said in the past, I do like when racing games have narratives and the developers try to flesh out characters and give them personalities, but if they don't, I try not to be too hard on them. I'm not too concerned about narratives in racing games. However, I do have an issue with how Underground 2 presents its story. The story here is primarily told through these comic book panels, and really there's nothing inherently wrong with them. I just felt that they were a downgrade from the 3D models in the first game. Those cutscenes were just downright ugly, but that makes them more memorable looking back at it. I know that Underground is still fresh in my mind, I just played it a few months ago, but the image of Samantha swinging her ghoulishly thin and long arms around will be burned into my brain for a while. Underground 2 doesn't have any moments like this, and as a result, its cutscenes are pretty forgettable by comparison. It's not a huge deal breaker, as we'll shortly get into, but I figured I should mention it. Underground 2 might not take any risks with its story, but I think it took the biggest risk of all by fundamentally changing the way that the game is played. See, every Need for Speed up until this point has been linear. You choose everything from a menu, your car, the event, the modifications, but Need for Speed Underground 2 was the first game in the franchise to introduce a truly open world map. And let it be known that 9 times out of 10, I will pick a linear, pick a car and track from a menu and go style racing game over an open world one. But Need for Speed Underground 2's open world is one of the best in racing game history and might have single-handedly changed my view on open world racers. That's a big and bold claim, I know, but please hear me out on this one. First off, let's talk about the setting itself. The game takes place in the city of Bayview, which I'm pretty sure is a fictionalized version of Los Angeles. The big Bayview sign overlooking the city is the dead giveaway there. Regardless, Bayview has 4 different boroughs to explore, those being Jackson Heights, Beacon Hill, City Core, and Cole Harbor, with Cole Harbor being divided into east and west. As you progress through the game, you'll unlock a new borough with new tracks set in those boroughs, and each borough has distinct characteristics to help differentiate one from another. Jackson Heights, for example, on the north side of the map is very hilly and mountainous, with windy, twisty turns, whereas Cole Harbor on the south side is the industrial zone. There's factories with smokestacks and a train yard down there, with lots of different shortcuts on the tracks. I ended up really loving the map too, just for its sense of detail. The game looks gorgeous, even for how old it is. Since the game takes place entirely at night, bright colors just pop. I especially loved the area with the casino, seeing the reflections on the cars and the motion blur when you hit your nitrous. It's peak. I have to keep reminding myself that this game is over 20 years old at this point. But I've sort of come to expect this after playing the first Underground. What exactly makes this game unique? If I had to name one singular reason, it has to be its sense of discovery. Many other open world games I've played, racing or not, the open world feels like a bit of a waste of time. I find myself just trying to beeline from point A to point B, and I can't help but feel like I'd much rather be in a menu just picking out my next location. That's because I'm so used to seeing maps covered in markers that I either end up setting my GPS and driving there, or worse yet, fast traveling there. Whereas with Need for Speed Underground 2, while there are those markers, much of the game's content is unmarked. So it essentially forces you to explore the map, and it's not like it's just side content or Easter eggs that's hidden either. No, there are full-on parts of the game that you cannot access unless you find hidden events or hidden shops. This, at first glance, sounds like a total pain in the ass, right? I thought I would hate this. Like, why am I wasting time just driving around in circles on this map to find a shop? But these devs thought of this and made these unlockables very easy to spot. How did they do that? Well, every city in the world I feel like has streetlights of some kind. Nobody really thinks much of them. They're either white or an amber color, and they light up sidewalks and businesses and neighborhoods, etc., etc. Well, what about colored streetlights? It's out of the ordinary to see a colored streetlight. The absolute madmen at EA Black Box added color to the streetlights to signify that a shop is there. And those streetlight colors even signify what kind of shop it is. Red for graphic shops, yellow for specialty shops, purple for garages, you get the point. Regardless, whoever's idea this was, I want to meet you and shake your hand. It's such a small detail in the grand scheme of things. This is a huge game after all, but I absolutely love this and I had to talk about it. It's immersive because it's a world object instead of a HUD element, but it stands out because it's something out of the ordinary on an ordinary object. I'm big on immersion in games, and this is just, it's genius. Speaking of that immersion, you're not the only racer in town, of course, and so you'll commonly see other race car drivers in their tuners cruising around Bayview. This alone is pretty cool in my book, but what elevates this is the fact that you can challenge these guys to impromptu races, called outruns. What separates these from the rest is that instead of a set course, if you're the leader, you get to decide where the course goes. The race ends when the leader gaps the follower by 1,000 feet, which is easier said than done sometimes. These don't progress the story at all, but damn are they fun. I wasted way too much time doing these, especially in the late game where I had some crazy fast modded cars. Let's talk about those cars finally. At the very beginning there are 6 cars to choose from: the Ford Focus, Honda Civic, Mazda Miata, Nissan 240SX, Peugeot 206, and a Toyota Corolla AE86. 4 Japanese, 1 American, and 1 European car. And that theme sort of extends across the entire roster of 26 cars. There are some more American cars like the Pontiac GTO and Ford Mustang, as well as more European cars like the Audi A3 and Volkswagen Golf GTI, but out of 26 cars, 18 of them are Japanese. The focus in Need for Speed Underground 2 is primarily on Japanese tuners, and I like that. I decided to start my playthrough with the Nissan 240SX. A staple in pretty much any street racing game. This car carried me through all of Stage 1. After that, I bought the Toyota Celica and beat most of Stage 2 with it. After the Celica, I found my workhorse, and that was once again the Mazda RX-7. I don't know what it is, but the RX-7 has quickly become my favorite car in this series. It always ends up turning into my workhorse one way or another. I think I beat most of Stage 3 and all of Stage 4 with it. I started to get bored of the RX-7 though. I wanted to mix it up for the video, and so I went ahead and bought the Mitsubishi 3000 GT. That car turned into my late game car, and that's what I used for most of Stage 5 before wrapping the game up with the Nissan Skyline R34 GTR. It is the No More Mercy channel after all, so you already know I had to check it out. If there's a Dodge Viper, R34, or a 4GT, you can expect me to be there. That's not to say I didn't experiment with other cars. I did buy the Audi TT and Toyota Supra, and don't get me wrong, they sounded really cool, but I couldn't get them to a place where I was competitive with the AI at that point in the game. What I mean by this is that each car has those same unique base stats from the first game, those being handling, acceleration, and top speed. And through upgrades, you can sort of build and mold a car to your needs. But I was so early on in the game at that point in time, I couldn't afford to get my car to a competitive spot and would rather just use what I had. That's not to say that these cars aren't great cars in the late game, it's just that I couldn't afford the upgrades at the time, or they just weren't available to me yet. In the first game, you were limited to one car at a time, so that severely restricted how you progressed through the game. Say you had a car that was really great at circuit racing but struggled in the drag races. Well, you can't keep it if you need to progress past a drag race, and instead you're forced into using a car that you might not want to use otherwise. Underground 2 allows you to have up to 5 different cars at a time in your garage. Thank you. So now if I want to have, say, a drift car, a drag car, and a circuit car, I can have 3 different cars with 3 different builds in my garage all at the same time. This was a major issue I had playing the first game, and I'm glad they saw it as an issue as well. Having this garage really helps encourage customization, and Underground 2's car customization is improved from the original in every possible way. The game has the same performance upgrade categories as the first game, those being the brakes, ECU, engine, suspension, transmission, turbos, tires, weight reduction, and nitrous. However, unlike in the first game, in Underground 2 you can kind of pick and choose which parts of a package of upgrades you want. What I mean by this is that, for example, the second transmission package unlocks a high performance clutch and a limited slip differential. But say that I only want the clutch, I can do that. It gives me more options and more ways to build out the kind of car that I want. But it goes even beyond that, with Underground 2 now having a dyno, a test track, and the ability to actually tweak different components that you install onto your car. It's actually nuts and goes way beyond what I expect out of an arcade racer, let alone Need for Speed. I didn't get too into the weeds on this, but I did adjust my gear ratios on both my drag car and my circuit race car. In drag racing especially, I just found it too difficult to reliably hit my marks every race, but once I tweaked the car, it was smooth sailing. I've been told by a few people that you can put together some really insane builds with this feature, so I would love to dive back into this on a repeat playthrough. That's not to say that the handling or anything is bad at stock. Every car I used in this game felt great to drive, as in the controls are very responsive and what I've come to expect from Need for Speed so far. The game's cars have a tendency to oversteer, which is something I can handle, and I actually prefer that. I love sliding my car through a corner, intentionally or not, and then feeling the tires grip back up before hammering the gas down. But the dyno and test track allow you to squeeze out a teensy tiny bit more performance and shave off those extra few tenths, which I felt like I needed in the drag races. I was actually taken aback by this because I just didn't expect to see this level of customization in a Need for Speed title, but I'm so glad it's here. It, along with the 5-car garage, allowed me to really build out and tweak different cars for different purposes and experiment more, which is something the first game desperately needed. On top of customizing your car's performance, visual customizations return, and they are somehow even more bonkers than in the first game. There are still front and rear bumpers, side skirts, wheels, side mirrors, roof scoops, hoods, headlights, taillights, underglow, muffler tips, paint, window tint, brand decals, vinyls, and wide body kits. That alone is a ton of different options, but Underground 2 adds even more. Options like customizable doors, split hoods, gauges, spinners, trunk audio, trunk and engine bay neon, nitrous purge, and hydraulics. Most of this stuff looks so gaudy and ugly, but man, this level of customization is mind-blowing. I don't think I have ever played a game with this level of car customization, and I very quickly realized that Underground 2 is the exact game I've been looking for years at this point. It just tickled that part of my brain where I wanted to create the most cursed abominations that I could. Now, I will say I tried to make my RX-7 and 3000 GT look good, and I think I did a pretty good job of that. I love pearlescent paint, and I think both of these cars look really sharp with their body kits and matching neon. But I figured I had 5 slots to use in my garage, and I was really only using 3 of them for performance vehicles, so I decided to use this opportunity to explore the brand new vehicle class, the SUVs. Yeah, so for whatever reason, Need for Speed Underground 2 introduces 3 SUVs into the mix. Those are the Hummer H2, Lincoln Navigator, and my choice, the Cadillac Escalade. I decided pretty early on that I wasn't going to use this for any other purpose besides to create an ungodly abomination, so I rolled it off the lot and straight to the shop. And here's what I came up with. I blacked it out, I put goofy money sign spinners on it, I installed hydraulics, scissor doors, a bunch of neon all around it, as well as a bunch of subs and a tank of nitrous in the trunk. The cherry on top of this sundae was this goofy looking wing coming off the back of the cabin. All of the money I spent on this thing was made from my other cars. I sort of just kept winning events and dumping money into customizing it further for this video, so you're welcome. This was way more fun than it had any business being, and kind of let me decompress and be creative, especially since these customizations really serve no purpose outside of the star rating system. Which is a bit of a bummer. I would have liked to have seen these serve other purposes. Maybe different trunk audio could change the way the soundtrack sounds, like if you put a bunch of really big subwoofers in the trunk, it makes the music really bassy. Which, by the way, 10 out of 10 soundtrack in this game once again. It is just stacked with bands like Queens of the Stone Age, Skin Dread, Rise Against, Mudvayne, and a bunch of others. What an absolute time capsule this game is. I think it's the best soundtrack I've heard in the series so far, but it's really hard to go wrong with any of these older racing games. As always, I can't play the soundtrack here on YouTube, but I have linked a Spotify playlist down below if you want to check it out. I got a little sidetracked, so getting back to the customizations, I just would have liked to have seen another utility for these customizations outside of the star rating system. Let me explain how that works real quick. How this works is that each part you install onto your car adds a preset number of stars to your total, and each additional star level you reach unlocks a new DVD cover opportunity. DVD covers are your way of showing off your work. It'll be in a preset location on the map, and for some of these you can actually change the camera angle, move your car around, and pop open your hood, trunk, and doors. It's awesome. Most of the time I try to either do a burnout or just angle my tires away from the camera so you could see my wheels. I like to think of this and the magazine covers as sort of an early photo mode almost, before every game in the world had one. I think they're really fun and they give you something to strive for outside of the main events. I do think the rating system is flawed though and could be improved. It kind of got to a point where I was just adding customizations to my car just to get my star rating up. If I wasn't going to see it, like the hydraulics for example, I'd install the highest tier to get the highest possible rating from that category and then forget I even had it. But that also extends to the exterior components, like let's just say a front bumper for example. If there was a bumper I really liked but it gave less stars than the one I didn't like as much, I'd still install the highest tier bumper. Underground 2 does have more options than the first game thankfully, so instead of being limited to say 3 bumpers, you're limited to 6. But it fundamentally limits how you can make your car look, which I don't care for. Granted, you can always uninstall these parts after doing what you need to do with them, or install the parts onto a secondary car and just keep that one in your garage, but it's a pain in the ass. I would prefer to see a system where each part in a category gives a set number of stars, regardless of which one you install. So, for example, any front bumper will add half a star, any spoiler will add 1 star, any paint job will add a 1/4 star, you get the idea. This would allow us to create any kind of car we wanted and see whatever car we create on any of the game's DVD and magazine covers. This might be a thing in the modern games, or maybe this isn't a thing at all, I don't know yet. Get subscribed so you don't miss any future Need for Speed episodes. I haven't talked about them yet in detail, but the event modes are generally what you're going to be spending most of your time doing in Need for Speed Underground 2. All of the events from the first game return, so circuit racing, sprint racing, drag racing, and drifting. But they've added a brand new mode called Street X. Street X is just like the circuit racing mode, so there are laps with a start-finish line, but the courses are specifically designed for this mode and they're very short, tight, and narrow. So in this mode, you really have to maximize the track limits, hit your braking points, and make sure your car is tuned with a lower top speed but quicker acceleration in mind. Especially since your nitrous is disabled, so it really enforces that idea of consistency. You can't just make a mistake and then smash your nitrous down the straightaways. I like this mode a lot, mostly because it was hard to pass if you found yourself in the back early. You really have to just kind of bide your time and hope the guy in front of you makes a mistake. Or maybe you can make one for him. Another mode I ended up really liking was drifting. This returns from the original game, but they've changed it just enough for it to be different. In the original game, drifting only took place on designated tracks, whereas in Underground 2, you still have those designated tracks for sure, but you also get to drift on public roads. It's awesome. Not only do you have to navigate the track itself and how many points you need to advance, but you have to watch out for traffic that can totally make or break your run. If you hit traffic, it ends your drift just like it would if you hit a barrier, but if you drift near traffic, it boosts your score like it would if you drifted near a barrier. I love the risk versus reward balance here, and I think it makes for a more engaging and fun mode overall. Unfortunately, it's not all positive with the event modes here in Underground 2, and it comes back to those damn SUVs. Look, if the SUVs existed as just fun little screw-around vehicles, then, you know, that'd be fine. I wouldn't have an issue with it. Slap some mods on it here and there, take it out for a spin and drive around aimlessly, whatever. It's there, but ultimately, it's harmless. But if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. But no, the devs just had to include SUV racing. Now you might be asking yourself, what's wrong with the SUV racing? Well, that ultimately comes down to how these things handle. Remember how I praised the handling and controls just a short time ago? Forget that, throw it out the window, because the SUVs play by their own rules. They love to understeer. I don't know how many walls I bounced off of just trying to carry the speed through a corner. And yes, you'll want to carry as much speed as possible because they are slow. So on top of bouncing off every wall and the race is going on for what feels like forever, they also don't even pay out that much when compared to the other events. I feel like I'm owed extra cash for my pain and suffering, but this isn't even the worst part. The worst part is that these races are considered world events, like the circuit races, the drifting, the street X, etc. And so they're required to progress through the game. You progress through each stage by completing a certain number of world events, by completing DVD covers, which remember require that high star rating, and finally by unlocking and completing the URLs. URLs, or the Underground Racing League, are more or less the quote-unquote bosses of the game in simple terms. These are like your tournament races from the first game, where it's a set number of races and you earn points based on your finishing position, like a championship basically. You don't need to win every race, but hey, if you want to make it easy on yourself, just win. Another thing, these URLs always happen at one of two locations: Bayview International Airport or at Bayview Speedway. The airport is, well, the airport, and Bayview Speedway is a closed circuit racetrack in Cole Harbor. Each location has 5 or 6 different layouts, each with different turns and lengths, though there is some overlap between some of them. I believe the longest layout is about 2.5 miles long, but even with that knowledge, I felt like these races went on for far too long, with too little variety between them. Since each URL is 2 to 3 races long and each race consists of 5 laps, you're going to be here a while. By the end of the game, I was just so tired of doing these. Granted, I was very happy to see them pop up on my map after completing however many events and DVD covers I needed to complete, because I knew that I was about to take a leap forward in the campaign. Early on, once you complete a URL, you unlock a new car or new customization parts. But it came to a point late in the game where these URLs just stopped unlocking anything. Generally speaking, this game comes to a grinding halt by the end of Stage 4. By that point in the game, you have access to pretty much everything there is to offer. Every car in the game is available, all tracks are available except for the West Cole Harbor routes. Most of the visual modifications are unlocked, all of the performance modifications are unlocked, you get the idea. I just got to a point where I felt like I had seen everything the game had to offer me. And here's the thing too, as you progress through the game stages, they get longer and require more out of you to progress. Stage 4 you might have to do, say, 25 world events and 3 DVD covers, whereas Stage 5 will require 35 world events and 5 DVD covers. Not sure if those numbers are accurate, but I'm just trying to give a ballpark answer here. So not only have you seen everything the game has to offer, but now you're going to have to sit through even more repeated content to progress slower than you have the entire game. Progression goes from a steady pace where I'm unlocking fun new things multiple times per hour to not unlocking anything for multiple hours at a time. Once I had unlocked the final URL and then I had my final showdown with Caleb, I was legit standing up in my office shouting. I mean, I was excited. I was so pumped to be done with this game. That's never a good sign, I understand that, and normally I'd be sitting here telling you to avoid this game, saying things like, oh, it's too long, it's tedious, it gets so boring, but somehow, someway, Need for Speed Underground 2 is my favorite Need for Speed. After all of the grinding, the trials and tribulations, and the URLs that seemingly never ended, I am stoked to say that I finally beat Need for Speed Underground 2. The early game, I'd say from the beginning to about 3/4 of the way through the game, give or take, it is easily the best Need for Speed that I've played. It's not even close. It's exactly the kind of racing game I've been looking for years at this point. It's an open world racer with discovery, with a great roster of cars and deep customization of those cars. It also has a solid variety of different modes and some very responsive physics and controls, all backdropped by a stellar soundtrack. It all contributes to this incredible vibe, this incredible time capsule of early 2000s culture that I am all about. There are a few things that bring the game down, sure, but the fact of the matter is this: I would replay this game. And trust me, I don't replay games I don't like. I'm already charting out in my head which cars I would buy, how I would customize them, how I would play the game differently, and which mods I want to look for to improve my playthrough. This game, for all of its shortcomings, more than makes up for them, and then some. In the beginning of the video, I wanted to find out if Need for Speed Underground 2 still holds up today. Not only does this game hold up, but I think I'm safe in saying that Need for Speed Underground 2 is one of the best racing games of all time, and an absolute classic addition to anyone's collection. If you've played it, you already know how great it is, and if you haven't, this is your call to action. Put down whatever game you're playing right now and give this a shot. You will not regret it. Thank you all so much for watching. This was a huge undertaking for my small little channel. I'm a one-man show, I do everything, so thank you for being patient with me. Also, huge shout out to my highest tier patron, CD-ROM Fossil, and all of my supporters over on Patreon. You guys are amazing. My name is Mercy, and as always, have a good one.